More reaction out of Indianapolis as Todd and Jason's comments have led to lots of speculation regarding Mike Evans, Lavonte David, free agency, and the NFL draft.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. I am your host, James Yarcho, writer over at Bucs Report. I've covered the Buccaneers for over a decade, and although it is not a Wednesday episode, that is Evan Klosky from 10 Tampa Bay, and I'm here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're going to hear about what stood out to Evan regarding Jason Licht and Todd Bowles' comments from the scouting combine earlier this week. But Evan, you missed last week. You were on vacation. I hope that was a wonderful and enjoyable experience. David Shealy stepped in. He did a great job. But yeah, we couldn't do our usual recording because I was in Indianapolis. But it seems as though, and this is going to be, I guess, probably a daily topic for the next week and a half. The Mike Evans saga has become an emotional roller coaster for Buccaneers fans. I'm actually going to have more about this coming up over the weekend as far as where my thoughts are on everything. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the comments from Jason Licht and Todd Bowles, as well as his agent, Derek Gilmore, who was on WDAE with Tom Krasnicki earlier in this week, and kind of where you stand on the whole Mike Evans situation right now.
Yeah, look, I think we're in the game of the in-between. I think the agent is just doing his job. It's his job to get the most money for his client. Obviously, if the Bucs are at price A and there's another team at price B, and Mike says, "Hey, I don't care. I want to go back to the Bucs. Thanks for trying," then it is what it is. But in my opinion, Mike Evans does not seem like a guy who wants to go for the bag, right? He doesn't seem like I need to be paid top dollar. I'm sure he wants to be paid a respectable amount, but so you got to ask yourself, then what is all this posturing? And then it has to come down to, well, maybe there's a little bit more that the Bucs can give here. Is there a chance that the Bucs have a figure that's around 13, 14 million, and Mike Evans and his agent are saying that's too low? We gotta, if you want him back, show the love, to the point where Jason Licht might have said, "Look, we understand you. Go test the market. Tell us what the market is telling you, and we can talk again." Chris Godwin just went through this in free agency. Typically, you're going to get overpaid. You're going to have offers that are well above market value. Chris had that from New England, according to multiple reports. And then ultimately, he took less money, still market value, but he took less money than what he could have made to return back to Tampa. So am I confident that Mike Evans is going to be here next season? I am not. Am I of the belief that Mike Evans is 100% leaving next season? I am not. I think we're in the middle of negotiations, which are being aired in a public forum. Jason felt very scripted. Todd felt a little less, but scripted on the sense of talking about Mike Evans. Oh, we love him. We hope and pray he's back. He has the right to test the market. Oh, if I had a nickel for every time he said, this man has the right to test the market, I could buy a snow cone. But I just think that there's nothing. It's uneasy because it does seem like they're going to let him kiss free agency, but there's nothing that says that right before free agency starts, boom, a deal a deal happens. So wait and see. But my opinion is, if you're out there thinking Mike is 100% back, or you're like Mike is definitely out, I just think you're too far the extreme on both ends. I think that it's right there in the middle, and but if I still had my guess today, I still lean towards Mike Evans returning.
One of the things that I have mentioned a couple of times now, and I'm so glad that T-Kraz asked the question to Derek Gilmore, but I want to ask you now. Do you feel like maybe this is a situation, because we know Mike isn't going to lack in supers, right? We know there's going to be teams that are interested in bringing in a guy like him, even at his age, to help their football team. Do you feel like this is a spot where Mike Evans, we may not hear anything when the open negotiating window begins on Monday? We may not hear anything when free agency begins on Wednesday, maybe not even Thursday, that he's going to sit back and he's going to say, okay, Jason, I'm going to give you a shot here. You show me you're investing in the defense. You're not bargain shopping. You're not clearance bin raiding. You are investing in this defense so that 3rd and 28 doesn't happen again. And then I don't care what the other offers are. This is my home. This is where I've spent my entire career. I'll play for less here, but you got to show me that you're actually trying to build this defense into a championship caliber squad.
Yeah, I think there's a world where it's like, okay, if you want me to take less money, prove it that you're going to use the money that I'm not taking, and you're going to throw it to the defense, right? You know, I think that that's a possibility. I think that would also be fair of Mike Evans to say, I want to return, but prove to me that this defense has the ability to be Super Bowl contending. You know, there's no rush, right? No matter what, any team out there is going to make space for Mike Evans. I'm sure that other teams can't like hold a candle waiting for him to come around. And I'm sure that Mike has like 1 or 2 spots. Like, you know, it's not like every team has a legitimate chance of landing Mike Evans.
Or that the Jets and the Cardinals are out, right? Like that, those two were ruled out by it.
Regardless, it's, you know, it's not like Mike Evans isn't going to go to the Raiders. He's not going to go to these up and coming. He needs to chase a chip. So that pretty much knocks out half the league right there of just people who you can assume entering the year have a chance to win a Super Bowl. And half the league is probably a high number, but I'm just trying to simplify it as much as possible. So, you know, then it goes down to preferences and so on and so forth, and coaches and systems and whatever. And I bet there's probably, like, outside of the Bucs, 1 or 2, maybe 3 teams that he's like, okay, I would think about it. So, you know, those teams would have to know, like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, wait for the Bucs, and you know, you're my number 2 in this process. But it gets a little dicey once free agency is completely open, though, because things are moving fast, money starts going, and teams start moving slots. But again, if Mike is not out there for the bag, I think whatever he's going to get, he'll be happy with, as long as it's for a championship. You know, I just keep going back. Like, what were the last 2 years that he was selling everybody on? When last time he was like, oh yeah, you know, I thought about it, you know, testing the market, but my wife said I want to stay in Tampa, and that was it. That was the end of the conversation. I probably wasn't going to leave anyway. Tampa's home, blah, 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 all this stuff. You know, like, I believe Mike when he says that stuff. And Mike, coming off of entering his last contract that he had with the Buccaneers, was in a much better spot in his career than what he just is coming off of, which, look, this guy is rarely injured in the grand scheme of things, but he's had hamstring issues for 7 straight years. He broke his collarbone. Like, his stock is not as high today, 2 years older also, today, versus what it was when he was a free agent the last time that we were all going through this. So, like, what am I missing here that Mike has, like, all this leverage? and has the world at his fingertips. A lot of teams want Mike. The Buccaneers want Mike. Every fan out there wants Mike. But I don't want to make things bigger than what they are because there's an emotional attachment here in Tampa Bay. And that emotional attachment is not there anywhere else. It's not. Maybe the Texans. We talked about it last time. I think Houston would be maybe a really good other option. He's got to believe in that system. But it is very clear the Texans have a Super Bowl caliber defense. If he believes in C.J. Stroud, which a lot of people don't, but if he believes in C.J. Stroud, you have Stroud, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, and then you better hope that they can help out that offensive line or something. But you add a couple of pieces to the Texans offense, all of a sudden, they're kind of looking like a team that can make that deep run. And you can you can make an argument right now that the Texans are closer to a Super Bowl than the Buccaneers. Last year proves that. So those are the things that I think just swirl around my head and where I'm kind of landing, just kind of in the middle of, we simply don't know what Mike is thinking. And Mike's a fairly private guy. So when his agent's going out speaking a lot, I just feel like he's doing his job, trying to get his client the most money possible.
Yeah, well, the good news is we're not going to have to do this for much longer. We will have an answer sooner than later. But Jason Light had plenty to say. We are going to find out what stood out to Evan. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flight, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. You guys already know Jason Tatum's coming back. The Celtics are already good without him. I think they're going to make some problems for whoever they end up facing in the playoffs. Now, not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, check out the Everydayer Club, the all-access tier. You can do so by clicking the link in the show notes, exclusive episodes, daily newsletters, all kinds of perks. You can check all of that out. There were plenty of things discussed that were not Mike Evans in Indianapolis. And Evan, we're going to start with Jason Light. And he talked about the tight end situation, the depth in this draft class at some of these defensive positions, the cornerbacks on the team. I saw that you posted a thread on Twitter or X, whatever you guys want to call it, of kind of some of the highlights from their podium and other interviews. But what really stood out to you as far as some of the things that Jason was talking?
Well, he the number one thing that stood out to me was when he said, like, for us to take the next step, he used those words, for us to take the next step, we got to have better pressure on the quarterback, which, if you know out there, if you're a loyal Locked On Bucs listener, because you've been rocking with us for many off seasons now, that I have complained about this every year. Every year, I have talked about the trenches and how concerned I am entering the season and how it's a thin mark. Like last year, I was like, oh, if you tell me the starting four is there, I love it. But once we get past that, I am scared. And they literally in week 2, we hit the scared option. So what I just like about it, and goes into a little bit of bowl stuff too, but like they know this is not good enough. They know they have a problem, and they didn't make the playoffs, and now they can't hide from it. Now they can't like throw other excuses in there and hide behind like a playoff loss as to why, things didn't really work out. Like, change needs to be had. You need to put that front seven. You need to take that front seven more seriously. Like, that was something that I liked hearing. Let's see the action behind it. It was also interesting to hear him say that he said it felt like they had, at this point, there were more edge guys on their board than, more edge and inside linebackers than defensive tackles, which if we take them at face value, that tells me when they enter free agency, they're looking for defensive tackles, right? If you don't feel like you have good enough options that can step in day one at defensive tackle in the draft, you need to make sure you solidify that versus, entering the draft saying, I know we're going to get this. I know we're going to get that. It could be a bluff. He could love the defensive tackles and want to just shy away from it, considering, and we'll get the Bulls that Bulls says they want to get bigger. So it's another sign. Like, that's the thing that I think is very underrated from fans' perspective right now. Everyone talks about the edge guys. I talk about them a lot too. Very important. They need to be better. But in the trenches, they're not good enough. Vita Vea was it last year when Kalijah Kancey went down. If you were to tell me that Vea and Kancey are going to play 17 games of the year, I'm very happy about that. Kalijah Kancey cannot stay healthy, and that's the reality we live in. So you have to imagine that you are going to be without Kancey for some period of time. Also, Vita Vea now has made it through 2 full seasons. I'd say eventually he's going to get injured again as well. You need a 3 and a 4th option to, like, they throw in those backup options. I like Elijah Roberts, but it's clear he is very much a pass rusher on the inside. He run is a problem for him. And the run defense was not that good last season compared to what one of the worst under Todd Bowles, and it's because they're not beefy enough on the inside. So Todd, knowing Todd, he's going to want to fix the run defense first because that's his bread and butter. And I just see that as a big point of emphasis. So I see free agency, defensive tackle, something happening there on the defensive line if we take them at face value. But we know they're going bigger. We know they're going to address that position. Otherwise, from Jason, I would say this wasn't at the podium, but I did like I think Mike Florio asked him the question about the injury stuff and how much money is invested into figuring out why they have injuries, the hamstring stuff, all that. Certainly the Tampa Heat is a part of it, but this is nothing new either. So, it was nice to hear kind of behind the curtain stuff about, like, they've had injuries the past couple of years. Fans have complained about it. That answer to me was very much like, I know it's a problem. Sometimes it's uncontrollable. We're trying to control some of the controllables. We're still figuring it out. And but we have invested a lot of time and money into it, and we will continue to do so. So I feel like from a fan perspective, just know that, like, they're trying. If, there's a difference between the Mike Evans hamstring stuff, which is soft tissue, and O'Keefe breaking his foot because someone rolled on it, or, Cody Mauch having a torn ACL because he stepped the wrong way in Houston. Like, you just don't know. So the one thing that was the problem, and I've said it forever, the Tristan Wirfs stuff from last season was 1,000% on the Buccaneers. They could say whatever they want. Hindsight's 20/20, yada yada yada. They screwed that up. They screwed it up. So they got to own that. And yeah. So I thought the Bulls stuff was a little bit more interesting to me in some ways than the Jason Light stuff. I thought Jason was pretty, standard.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me was also the top of our board. There aren't as many defensive linemen as linebackers and edge rushers, and I could make the argument, maybe you disagree, that could mean that they drafted defensive tackle in the first round. If
that's
one
very
of the
possible
few
too.
Guys that they have up there are so far ahead of all the other ones. They're like, okay, we can still get a starting caliber linebacker and edge rusher on day 2. We have to take this defensive tackle up here.
I think that's a good point. Yeah,
that was kind of one of the other ways that I looked at it, that maybe it is a Peter Woods or a Caleb Banks. Who
Caleb Banks tested really well
until he had to call it off because he was having cleat problems.
Yeah,
can't say that I blame him. The dude is coming off of a foot injury. I get it. But yeah, both of those guys tested extremely well. Not quite as well as some of these linebackers, though. I'll get into that on another episode. Those Ohio State guys, man, they are
built different.
They really, truly are. Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles are just, they have a competition between themselves for who is going to outperform the other one. Both of them, as we're recording this, officially ran a 4.46 40.
That's crazy.
Absolutely insane. All right, we are going to get into the Todd Bowles conversations. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Welcome to the 5-hour energy flavor draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. 5-hour energy has a wide variety of flavors, which means there's definitely something for everyone, and they give you that boost that you need with 0 sugar. My go-to has always been the berry, which is, it's slightly sweet, but it gives you that classic mixed berry taste that always hits the spot. However, I've recently become a huge fan of the strawberry watermelon. Those are my 2 favorite fruits. Those 2 flavors were meant to be mixed together. It is absolutely outstanding. So while berry has been the 101 leader in the clubhouse, that strawberry watermelon could sneak in and be a shocking pick at the top spot. Find your new favorite flavor of 5-hour energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. You've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit? You know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates, and they boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role. That makes the real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and Todd Bowles also had some interesting moments for sure when he spoke to the media. There was the declaration that they needed to get bigger, the fact that Zach Robinson is going to make the defense better because Todd won't have to spend so much time with the offense.
Let me just say this.
Complicated.
If there's one thing that I feel like the Bucs staff needs to tell Todd Bowles a little bit is like, dude, go out there and just own everything. Blame yourself. Like, dude, going back to the season, going back to the offseason, like everything. And I think the fans want it too. He always starts with the like, look, I first start with myself, blah, blah, blah. And then he lists off a ton of excuses. Like, whatever. Like, I get it. Part of it is he can't blame his players, right? You're not gonna say, hey, we got crap players. That's why we're playing crappy, right? That's not gonna make a locker room very happy. But like, you cannot tell me that Josh Grizzard had that much of an impact on the second half collapse. Like, I don't care. It is your fault. You are the head of the snake. You are the one that hired him. You, Jason Light, Glazers, whatever. It's your fault. Your fault. Stop blaming the players. Stop blaming the offensive coordinator you all hired. It starts with you. Whether that's fair or unfair, that's leadership. It starts with you. It ends with you. Just say it was my fault. I'm working to be better. Move on. Just stop it. It's like, and some of this stuff is, leading questions, and then he answers them, and then, we all take it different ways. Like, I don't think that's the case here. I listen to everything that Todd Bowles has to say, everything, or I try to find everything, even the stuff that he's speaking with Florio and CBS Sports and Ira Kaufman, all this stuff. I listen to it all. Dude, you got to start owning more stuff and stop with the explanations. If you're going to ask why, if someone's asking like why Josh Grizzard was fired and you explain those reasonings, that's one thing. But then saying like, oh, I can now spend more time with the defense because I don't have to worry about the offense. Like, what was the excuse with Liam? What was the excuse with Dave? What was the excuse with Byron? Like, just you've had to do this before. Like, it can't be like that bad. I don't know. I think that they're just Todd, and we've talked about this a while. Just Todd in front of a microphone you're really not getting the true Todd. And I just think in not getting the true Todd some of the times, and him trying to just parlay some things, he's not doing himself any favors. So that's my rant on that one. It just
poor Grizz, man. He got thrown under the bus. The bus was backed up over him. And then he goes and you're like, oh, Philadelphia's getting a great coach.
Right. Well, I understand and this isn't to discredit what Todd is saying about Grizz and like, oh, he's probably 2 to 3 years away. Again, that's from the Ira Kaufman interview. Him saying that, I think that was very telling. He's not close. He's 2 to 3 years away. You hired someone that was very far away from being NFL ready, is what you're telling me. So There's a little bit of we screwed that up. We screwed it up, and I certainly understand that you probably have to take some of your attention off of other things because you're babysitting him a little bit. But in the end, then to come out and just say, look, we thought Josh was going to be something, young, up-and-comer, great schemes. I didn't make a good hire. We had to make a change. It was, it was just too much too soon. And, this is the redo, right? Just own it straight up. Not like, hey, Josh did this, there was this going on, that going on. Like, I don't know. But like, it didn't help. Don't get me wrong. It didn't help, but nobody out there, by the way, has explained like a Baker Mayfield significant injury either. So it just seems like it's going to be something that, Josh is going to have to wear. And my thing in all that is like, what else did you expect? Right? Like, you hired a first-time coordinator, somebody who was just he never called plays before. At least Liam called plays. Dave Canales was in the league for like 11 years with Seattle, working his way up before he called plays, and he had some things to work on as well. But like, when you make those hires, that's a work in progress. You're not getting a finished product. So, okay, I'm done with my rant. Let me just get into some of the things that Bowles mentioned. Tyke Smith is staying at safety. I apologize to everyone out there. I've been holding it in. It was a long vacation. Tyke Smith staying at safety. I said they're going to have to get bigger. Again, mentioned sort of the pass rush needs. Just mentioned how sometimes they got to win, so on and so forth. Again, more and more front seven help. It's very clear that the time has come that they need to do that. He also mentioned Servassier Dennis. He said that he did not do well in open field tackling. Some quotes that we don't get during the season that we finally got of where, which is true. What his assessment of Voss was correct. He did some really good things against the run, not so good things against the pass. And that he said, if he can clean that up in the open field, that, he certainly has a chance to be a starter, but they're going to bring in competition. He's going to have to compete for that starting gig. So, certainly, despite earning the starting gig last year, it does not seem like they're ready to tab him, the starter next year, despite having a year under his belt now and being a bit more comfortable. So just take of that what you will. They need 2 linebackers to me. That's what it says. We don't need one in Voss. And you and I can talk about this, but coming from the head coach, it sounds like we need two, and Voss can be the third. Other than that, some really good things about Zach Robinson, about the vetting process, and mostly about which is true, and I didn't think about it, 100% true. This is really the first time that Todd has an offensive coordinator who has done it at the NFL level for multiple years and could maybe set it and forget it a little bit more. Zach has done it for 2 years. Liam Cohen was an OC at Kentucky, but he never did it at the NFL level, despite, being alongside Sean McVay. Canales never did it. Byron Leftwich was, didn't have Bruce Arians there along by his side anymore. So there are benefits to that. Whether that leads to a tremendous difference here, we'll find out. But the fact that Todd Bowles said that that interviewing Zach reminded him of Liam Cohen during that process, I think should lead to a lot of optimism from fans. So, there was a lot of good stuff, and I gave my rant, but that was, if you can search for a lot of the Todd Bowles, Buccaneers.com has a bunch of it. YouTube has a bunch of it. If you listen to the Todd Bowles, there's a lot of Todd Bowles sound out there. I found Todd Bowles' sound to be a little bit more informative to me from the outside looking in versus maybe a Jason Light sound. So that's just a generalized stuff. But those were my quick hitters.
All right. Well, Evan, what do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay and 10tampabay.com and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
Yeah, you can hit up the 10 Tampa Bay News app. We'll have, our 6, 11 o'clock shows on. Right now, we're in the throes of spring training. So we are gearing up for opening day, which is pretty much a month from today, depending on when you're listening to this. But as we're recording, it's a month from today. The Lightning are back in action. They are going to be making a Stanley Cup run. We got some fun things that we're cooking up with them as we get closer to the playoff push that they're going to make. Certainly with the Buccaneers, free agency coming up in a couple of weeks. The draft coming up in April. We're going to have plenty of content there, and all of it is going to be on the 10 Tampa Bay News app.
All right. Yep. Make sure you are checking out everything over there. Make sure you are checking out everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eClosky, WTSP. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Check out the Everydayer Club in the All Access tier. You can click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonbucks.supercast.com. You want to support the show, but you don't want to join the Everydayer Club? It's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.